And the AAT Birds Inside Swoop, we got the Bengals breakdown this Wednesday night. Got a lot to talk about. Eagles made some moves, some stuff going on, bruh. Nice shirt, Chip. But we're going to get into it in a matter of moments here, right after the intro.
He looks right, he fires, and it's intercepted! It's intercepted! It is intercepted by the Eagles! What a play! Snap. He's back, he's going to run. He's in! Touchdown! Jalen Hurts! 20. Westbrook takes it. Looks for running back. Up to the 25, the 30, to the 35-40, 45 midfield, 45-40, 45-40. Ryan Westbrook! He's going! He's gone! Touchdown! 15-10! The Eagles win! The Eagles win! The Eagles win!
It's all birds, all the time.
And we are live to talk
and in
about,
HD.
Yeah. Don't move too much. You become pixelated. Some
Sorry.
people may actually want that because they got to look at you, but we'll see what as he goes off the screen. But we're going to talk about the Eagles and the Bengals matchup here. So it's going to be interesting because the Bengals have been playing better football as of late. They've had a win streak of two games, I believe. I think they're 3-4 now. So they're on the cusp of adding to the wins. They want to get into a position in the AFC, which is a very winnable conference to get into the playoffs. So they want to keep their roll going. The Eagles, on the other hand, want to do the same thing. So it's going to be a battle of two teams. A couple of things I do want to give to you later on in the show here. A couple of facts here, which are interesting with this Eagles-Bengals history. I think they've played each other 13 or 14 times only. So it's a couple of things there. But Chip, how are we doing tonight to break down this game?
I mean, I'm ready to go. I've set up the HD camera so you can see my facial features and my expressions and my absurd beard and my ridiculous t-shirts again.
It's going to look a lot better when it gets cut and we have those clips. It's going to look a lot better for you.
I just feel like that's what was really missing out of this entire Eagles season, not being able to see me have thoughts about the Eagles.
Well, they still can hear you, so that's
a bigger issue on its own. I'm going to be honest. This game, just with the way that the Bengals are, this is a game that I did circle kind of in my mind as a trouble game. They have a lot of weapons on offense. They've got a quarterback that can be highly precise. I mean, this is the kind of team that the Eagles struggle against. So more than anything, I'm hoping that the Eagles kind of stick to the script and don't give the Bengals as many opportunities to have the ball. And that's going to be very simply controlled by, do we control it with the running game? Do we control the clock with the running game? That is my not sponsored by Tesla key to the game.
I figured you'd bring that back up, but no, it's, this is going to be a tough matchup. The Eagles are a little banged up. We know already about Jordan Mailata. Went on IR last week. You don't have him. Dallas Goedert didn't practice. Zach Bond didn't practice. So to watch a couple of things there. My big thing and takeaway, looking at this upcoming matchup, and you kind of mentioned talking about Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense. They've got a ton of playmakers with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. The running back situation for them is pretty good. Sidney Brown's twin brother, Chase Brown, is the top back. They do use a couple of backs, but listen, the Eagles defense is going to have a true test this weekend to see if they can keep building off of the last two games on how they've been and how they've progressed and how they've gotten better.
Right.
So that's really what I'm looking forward to, is seeing this defense and how they react to a team and a quarterback that can get the ball out very fast and see what they can do up against a player like Joe Burrow.
And that's probably my biggest concern. I mean, for me, the first game that the Eagles have really looked dominant top to bottom was last week against a very, very bad quarterback in Daniel Jones. Joe Burrow is not Daniel Jones. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even the dude whose name I can't pronounce, Andre Isavasavas, those are all they're good to great wide receivers. And at the tight end position, I know that Gesicki is technically listed as their tight end too, but we don't have the linebackers to stop a possession tight end like him. So I think that there's a ton of weapons on the Bengals team. I think they're going to have to go punch for punch. And the biggest way to do that is long, sustained drives, using the running game, using short, quick passes. Every pass doesn't need to be a home run ball on the Eagles' offensive side of the ball.
No, they don't. So listen, both sides of the ball is going to be a tough matchup. You're going to have to be ready because, the Bengals struggled early in the season, against the run. They had a lot of guys banged up on their defensive line, especially the interior of their defensive line, which they've gotten back pretty healthy now. So they're going to be raring and ready to go. They're going to be healthy defensively, especially along that line. They got 2 premium pass rushers with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. They got a young player in Miles Murphy as well. So they've got some players. They have a tough task there. They got a couple linebackers that are pretty good in Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. So they've got some talent on that defensive side of the ball. They've been beaten up a little bit in the secondary, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a tough matchup in a place where the Eagles have never won in Cincinnati.
And
one of my little facts for you.
We gotta come up with a fake sponsor situation for your facts. I don't know. I'll be creative in a couple minutes. The other thing that is worth mentioning is, like you mentioned, the Bengals started off really, really rough this year. They are back to 3-4, and at this point, they have got to win to keep pace, right? So or even keep themselves having a shot. So I do think that it is important for the Bengals to come out aggressive, really attack. I mean, this cannot be a game where we revert back to let's play our corners 15 yards off the ball. I mean, that Joe Burrow is too good, Jamar Chase is too good, T. Higgins is too good. That cannot be the defensive game plan.
And the thing is, the Bengals have played the same 2 teams the Eagles have just played. So they both have played the same teams. So the last 2 games, they've been the Bengals, it was against the Giants and Browns, the Eagles, Browns, Giants. So they both played the same teams the last couple weeks. So, you can't say, oh, they've played better teams leading up to the Eagles. They've played the exact same teams. So, it's time where these 2 teams clash. And it's going to be interesting because, again, what Eagles team is going to show up, what Bengals team is going to show up. We just don't know. And that's, the big thing with the Bengals are, like, we know how we get when the Eagles wear their Kelly greens. You get that, for some fans, you get that nostalgic feel. Everything's pretty, hey, look at that. They're wearing this Kelly green. This is awesome. It's a throwback game. Let's go. Well, the Bengals are wearing their all white, their white Bengal uniforms, basically all white helmet, white jerseys, white pants, all white. So they got that. Basically, it's going to be the white out almost. So it's going to be a key thing. I know it's different, but it's still something where, a lot of the fans are getting ready for this. It's going to be awesome. That stadium's going to be loud. It always is. It's going to be a tough matchup in that aspect. And the Eagles never do well in Cincinnati. They've struggled mightily.
It's funny watching the video clips that you've sent me this week. There have not been a lot of defining moments in the Eagles franchise history that against the Bengals, other than Donovan McNabb not knowing that a tie is a thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, yeah, and the last time the Eagles have beaten the Cincinnati Bengals was 2000. Donovan McNabb led Eagles beat them in, I think it was Christmas Eve on 2000 or right after Christmas. It was one of those games. But one of the end of the year in 2000 was Donovan McNabb beating the Cincinnati Bengals. But I have another question for you. I'm not sure you're going to be able to know this. I did just give you one of the winning quarterbacks for the Eagles and Bengals. Now they did tie twice. So remember, that is also something that they have done, is tie twice. But can you name me this one may be hard for you. Can you name me the 3 quarterbacks who have beaten the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, you said 2000.
Well, I already told you the one. I just said it, McNabb.
Right.
So there were
But that
two other
wasn't- oh, yeah,
instances.
because McNabb took over in 99. So quarterbacks that have beaten it had to be pre-McNabb.
And both quarterbacks have played since this. The Eagles have won 3 times since you've been born. So,
Okay, so it was between 86 and 2000.
Yeah.
Which means I feel like Rodney Peete has to be one.
No,
Okay.
he was on the roster.
All right, so Randall beat them?
No, he would have if he would have played that year.
Okay.
So there's a couple things there. See, this is a little trivia question that we have
It is.
into it here, making you think a little bit, making the teacher think.
It's the Bengals. Nobody gives a crap.
Well,
Give me a year. I'll see if I can pull the quarterback out of my butt.
I told you the year that Randall did get hurt a couple of years. So the year I was born, 91, is one.
Oh, one of them is one of them Jim McMahon.
Yes, Jim McMahon was the one. That was 91. And the next one is 1997. It was this guy's coming out party with everyone
Bobby
thought that he
Hoying.
was- yes. Bobby Hoying game, which everyone thought it was right after the Ravens game where they tied the Ravens. They come and he had, I think it was
All
4
these stupid
touchdown
ties.
passes against the Cincinnati Bengals. Everyone was thinking, he's the next guy. The Eagles have found their quarterback. It was a lot of that. And then, 1998.
Update. He was not.
He was not what?
He was not their next quarterback.
Well, there's a
Spoiler
thing.
alert. He was not.
Unfortunately, he was not. Yes, he was not. Because 1998 happened and we saw, it was not very good.
I mean, but and that's one of the things that's so interesting to me about this matchup. I mean, this is a matchup that happens every couple of years just because of the way the NFL works. And it's not a matchup that has a lot of rivalry. It's not a matchup that has a lot of history. It's not one of those matchups that sticks out in your mind. The fact that we had to bring up Bobby Hoying, we had to bring up Jim McMahon as topics on tonight's show really lets you know that we are digging deep for you, the fans, to give you just a tidbit of Bengals history.
I think the thing of it, when you look at the Eagles-Bengals matchup history, you got the 2 ties in there. So the tie from the last time they played him in 2020, which was Joe Burrow's rookie year, Carson Wentz, in the midst of his disaster campaign, his last Eagles season.
That was really bad.
You have that one in there. And then you have, I believe they played, let me just type it back in here, because I know one of them was 2005. Well, 2004. It was in 2005. So the end of the 2004 season when it was just backups. So Coy Detmer playing and, everybody of the Eagles backups were playing. Well, they lost that game because all the backups were playing.
Right.
2016, Wentz's rookie year, they struggled and got beaten by a very, very talented Bengals team. 2012, Andy Reid's last year. It's funny. There's like a theme to every one of the games. Andy Reid's last year, they were in the midst of an absolute downfall. And I believe...
So,
I think
as a
they
way of
played it.
leading you in, since you're the one establishing the history here, since the common theme has been kind of last hurrahs and failures.
Interesting.
See? You're kind of doing this
Well,
yourself. You're editorializing that this is a game we're going to get blown out and Sirianni's going to get fired afterwards.
Or am I saying... I know. Or am I saying...
You did this yourself.
I know. Or am I saying this is finally going to rid of what it usually is? One, they've never won in Cincinnati. 2, the last time they beaten the Bengals was 24 years ago. So it gives you the point of, is this finally the end of this so-called streak that you've had to endure against a Bengals team? It's just something to think about. Aside from
I'm
that.
thinking.
I
I'm
know.
thinking now you're Captain Happy again.
Aside from that, the Eagles made a couple roster moves.
Yes, they did.
Well,
First off, we got to talk about how Devin White found a home.
Yes, Devin White is now a member of the Houston Texans. And the other thing is a lot of trades, which I'm liking. I'm liking this aspect of the NFL trade deadline. Now, I don't think the deadline itself, the day itself, is going to be very active. Maybe a small move here or there. I think leading up to it, which we're seeing, is where we're seeing the moves and seeing the teams, hey, I need to make my roster better and go out there and do something. We saw it early last week with the 2 receiver moves in Amari Cooper to the Bills and Devontae Adams to the Jets. We saw this week, today, DeAndre Hopkins got traded to the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a litany of injuries, and they needed to improve, and you're seeing that.
And I think that what I find most interesting about it is you're seeing earlier and earlier teams deciding their fate for the year, right? So the Chiefs, we know, are going to make a run for it, so they go out and they get the best wide receiver available. We know that the AFC East isn't really crazy competitive, and in order to make Aaron Rodgers happy, you went out and got his guy. You fired head coach that wasn't his guy. So a lot of the moves are happening early. As far as like the Titans. The Titans aren't really going to go anywhere this year, and they have established that right now. They have established right here at this moment they are not going anywhere. The Raiders, that they're getting rid of players because they have established already that they are not going anywhere this year. It's almost a tanking situation. I mean, obviously you're going to go out, you're going to play the games, you're going to try and be competitive because, people's livelihoods are on the line. But I do think it is interesting how early some of these teams are saying, nope, this ain't going to be our year. Contracts being what they are, we'll take our chances in in free agency.
Well, you're also seeing a team like the Rams. They're saying that they would look at trading Cooper Kupp and they would eat some of the salary and some of the money for if they get a second-round pick. Listen, he's 31 years old. If a team is willing to trade them a top pick, they may do that. Like you said, the Titans traded the linebacker that they got, Ernest Jones, from the Rams early in the season, traded him to the Seahawks, who need some help defensively. They've got so many injuries on the defensive side of the ball, who then they traded Jerome Baker, who they signed this year, along with a draft pick to get Ernest Jones and a draft pick. So, there's moves happening. There's things happening. The Eagles are rumored to be looking at a couple defensive positions. We'll see. They're always
before we talk about those rumors. Let's discuss a rumor that has absolutely no basis in fact at all. I will say it unequivocally. Cooper Kupp will not be a Philadelphia Eagle.
What happens if it happens? There has to be some stipulation. If it happens, you need to do something.
If it happens, it's absolutely moronic. It means that the team is moving away from the run game. You already have a situation where A.J. Brown is your number 1 receiver. Devontae's looks are going down, and you're just now starting to get the ball into Saquon's hand.
I think I know. I'm going to post something tomorrow now since it's already all fired up, and I think it's going to fire a lot of people up. So I think it's a good engagement factor to see what people's thoughts are.
I'm just telling you that it would completely revamp whatever the offensive strategy is. Like, I'm all for having all the weapons possible. And obviously, he's an upgrade at the slot receiver position. But you went out and got Jahan Dotson for a reason. Now,
listen, Ben Van Sumeren is the fullback.
Right.
You happy about that?
Has not panned out as what you wanted to. But to give up on him and go out and get a 30-plus-year-old, often injured receiver that requires a lot of looks to get himself on a roll and to build that relationship mid-season, Cooper Kupp is not going to be a Philadelphia Eagle.
Believe me, I don't believe it's going to happen either, especially with the teams who need receivers like a Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And that's my point.
Team or a Pittsburgh Steelers team or something along the lines of that. But the Eagles did make a move. They released Paris Campbell, who then today came back onto the practice squad. They freed up with that roster spot. I thought it was going to be Anaya Smith being activated and put on there. No, it was Jack Driscoll was then elevated to the 53-man
which
roster.
Is very, very smart.
Yeah, because he can play every offensive line position. He has that versatility. And he knows the system. He knows the coaching staff. He's familiar. That's fine. That's great. The other thing which I liked was they signed Siaki Ika. I know it's a hard name to say sometimes, but he was drafted in the 3rd round 2 years ago, I believe, by the Cleveland Browns. A 6'3", 335-pound backup nose tackle he will be. Exactly what they need. You need someone behind Jordan Davis, someone that just in case you need something, in case of an injury, he's there. He's young, he's talented. Put him on the practice squad, let him learn. Got a defensive line coach in Clint Hurt, who's one of the best. I love that move. And I was talking with a couple people and about like him early when he was first released back in August about Eagles should have him in the practice squad. They need a backup nose for this system, everything. And now he's finally there. So that's great to see. But it's going to be interesting to see what the Eagles do, because when you take a look at the roster and the way it is right now, Anaya Smith, this is in his second week. You have 21 days until you have to be activated. And if you're not activated, then you cannot be activated for the season. You're basically out for the year. You have Anaya Smith, which Vic Fangio talked about Cooper DeJean and his punt returning. If he's the starting nickel, he doesn't really like that, which I get. You don't want him to get hurt on a punt return.
We've talked about this a ton of times. You don't want to put skill players in a position where they could get hurt on special teams.
Exactly. So you have that with Anaya Smith. James Bradbury, I know we all don't want to see him back. Everything, I understand that, but he's getting to the time period of potential activation of the 21-day window on him. So, what they do there, Jordan Mailata has 3 more games that he's got to be out for. So there's a couple of things that we're seeing. And of course, injuries can happen where players can go on IR, roster spots are freed up, whatever that may be. But it's going to be interesting to see what this team does, because if the defense keeps playing better, they may not add anybody, because if they keep...
Well, and so it's one thing that I'm now learning, like we're now live on multiple platforms, including Instagram, but the Instagram comments don't come onto our thing over here on StreamYard. So I have it just rolling down here. Dougie is asking, who's watching on Instagram, who do you think we will get before the trade deadline? Johnny, do you have anybody on your wish list?
So a couple of players on
any position even.
Yeah. So I'm not going really offensive side of the ball. I don't really think, like, maybe a backup tight end, but again, they like Grant Calcaterra. Jack Stoll's their blocking tight end. I don't see that. The players that I would like.
Hold on. I like the tight end conversation. Let me add on to this real quick. I think if you required the tight end to be an offensive weapon rather than just a glorified blocker, then you would absolutely make a move for a tight end to replace Calcaterra and Stoll. However, they don't seem to need it. And again, you saw the offensive game plan against the Giants. It was not to incorporate the tight ends. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. So listen, Grant Calcaterra had a good game against the Browns when he had to step in. He wasn't really... Listen, Jalen Hurts threw the ball 14 times. He wasn't a
part of the game planning for the Giants.
Hurts threw the ball 14 times, 10 completions. There's only so many completions when you complete it 10 times to go around. Yeah. So it is what it is on that. But looking at players that I would look at and would love to see them add, one is Devin Lloyd from the Jaguars, a linebacker. I loved him coming out of college, and I would love to have him in this defense. He'd be a player that I would add. I don't know Jerome, I don't know the whole Jerome Baker thing, if he's going to wind up getting released by the Titans or if he's going to play with them. I don't know his relationship with Vic Fangio. He played with the Dolphins last year. I know there were some players that didn't like Vic Fangio, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. If he were to get released, he'd be a player I would sign in a heartbeat. But players to trade, like edge rushers, Zadarius Smith from the Browns. I know a lot of people talk Myles Garrett, but Zadarius Smith's going to be a lot cheaper.
Myles Garrett is not,
and Myles Garrett is a cornerstone piece. Unless you give 2 to 3 first-round picks, I don't think the Browns are budging anywhere on that. So Zadarius Smith would be a definite player that I would look at. He can rush the passer. He's played stand-up edge rusher. He's a good player. He'd be a player that I would take a look at. I know Trayvon Walker from the Jags have been mentioned. People have said, because the thing with the Jaguars is they have one of the highest salaries, basically not the cap, but the amount of money being paid to players this year. They're like their top 4 in the league, and they're struggling big time. So there's ways that they can offset some of that and get rid of some of the players to get some draft picks to get, make that number lower. Trayvon Walker, of course, another Georgia Bulldog. He'd be a player I would definitely take a look at. He's a young player. He's got a lot of buddies on the team. If so, but there's a couple of guys out there, and those are a couple of guys that I would love to see them add. We'll see what they do, and I don't think anyone in the secondary they need to add. I think they're pretty good there, especially with Sidney Brown coming back. I don't think there's really anything you really need to do along the lines of that. You have Slay and Quinion and Cooper, and then you have in backups with Keely and Isaiah Rogers, and you have Blankenship, CJ, GJ, and you have Sidney Brown. I think you're okay and set along the lines of the secondary. I think you could always upgrade, your defensive line. Now, the defensive tackle situation, like looking at the Tennessee Titans, 2 other players, I would sniff around if you want to do that, see if they're willing to.
I don't like that phrase. I don't like that phrase at all.
You come up with a better one, and then we can, go about that.
Check the tires. Kick the tires a little bit on.
Kick the tires. Look around.
Yeah.
So
sniff around. I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
It smells like shit. Well, if you're sniffing around the Titans, you would smell that. But looking at guys like Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle, now he got absolutely.
Who we always want. We always want on this team.
But I'm just saying, Jeffrey Simmons would be a guy, but I think would cost way too much. But a guy like Harold Landry, an edge rusher coming off an injury, but is still a quality, young enough, is a really good player. He'd be a player I would think about. So there is players out there. We'll see where everything goes. But I do think if they can add maybe one more piece on the defense, a viable player that could maybe take the defense from right here to like another step. And again, the defense is starting to take that step and starting to get better and better as each week goes on. Especially the last 2 weeks, they've looked really good. Now I know they've been playing not so high caliber opponents, but listen, last year they struggled against Drew Lock and the Seattle Seahawks. So listen, they can do well. If they're supposed to do well against a team, we shouldn't downgrade that because they did it against a bad team. They've showed us in years past that they're willing to come down to the level of the opponent and not play the way that they should.
That's been this team's MO.
Exactly.
Like we said,
if they can show
first time it has not happened was last weekend.
Yeah. And listen, the defense hasn't showed us that in the last couple of weeks. Hopefully we can see them keep building. And even the New Orleans game, 3 games this year, the defense has showed up big time. And if that's a precursor to what we're going to see as the season goes on, I'm all for that because that means Vic Fangio system that they're starting to get. So listen, I'm not a fan of the Fangio system. And I'm never going to be, but maybe he can kind of sway me a little bit. And he's starting to give me a little bit of hope with the players starting to learn it. But again, we got to see it this week against a very tough opponent in the Cincinnati Bengals.
I think if the Eagles are going to make a trade of any kind, it's going to have to be along the defensive side of the ball. I mean, if you look at the offense, Jalen Hurts is your quarterback. Your running back room is Saquon Barkley. Your wide receivers are very, very, very good. You just have to get them incorporated. Tight end, we already discussed. Your offensive line, if they're not a Stoutland guy already, there's no point in bringing them in, right? You need an offseason with Stoutland to become a Stoutland guy. So I don't see them bringing in any offensive lineman other than who they already have. I think if they make a move, it's going to be an edge rusher of some kind, just because that is where we have not gotten a lot of productivity. I don't see them going out of their way to bring in a big name linebacker. I just don't. That's not what
how they operate. So we know that.
It's just not what they do. So I could see them going out and getting an edge rusher if they find something. But besides that, I don't see the Eagles being very active at the trade deadline.
No, I said they may add one piece and maybe a smaller, we'll see. Again, injuries can also dictate what you do. And, we'll see. Because I think the trade deadline, I believe, is after week 8, I think. The NFL trade deadline.
It used to be week 6.
Yeah, they changed it. I think they changed it going into this year. They changed it. So yeah, the trade deadline is. Let me see. No, every year in the past it's been October 31st, but this year November 5th.
So just 1 week later.
Yeah, so it's literally just about 1 week later. So hey,
John checking in saying Fangio better keep blitzing to help this D-line. O-line has to play better. What was really interesting about that, John, is that it wasn't a ton of blitzing last week against the Giants. It was the defensive line finally getting home.
Well, a couple of Nakobe Dean blitzes did really help. They were
Sure.
perfectly timed.
Sure.
But a lot of the stuff, what they did was essentially, I guess you're right. It really wasn't a blitz because per se, when Nakobe Dean blitzed, one of the ends came off. So
That's what I'm saying.
You were still sending 4 guys, and they were hitting the area that was.
They were disguising the pass rush differently. They were disguising it differently. They were doing this creativity thing, which is, awesome in the NFL. But I wouldn't call it a blitz per se. It's just that our D-line and our initial 4 got home a lot more against a very, very bad Giants offensive line. So that's got to be successful. And then you can add in the wrinkles of the blitz. But again, I'm definitely worried about this week because Joe Burrow is going to pick apart a blitz if it does not get home.
Yeah, you're going to have to get to Joe Burrow is to get in his face and make him uncomfortable
Early and often.
And that's the way you beat him. You get in his face, you make him uncomfortable. And, we'll see what happens. Listen, the Eagles have a tough task. And they have a tough task looking offensively. And that's where if they're able to get some type of success running the ball against this Cincinnati defense, it's going to bode well for them because, listen, you don't want to be putting I trust Lane Johnson. We know that. I also Mekhi Becton didn't practice. I don't think he plays this week after concussion. I just don't see it. So you're going to have Tyler Steen and then Fred Johnson on the left-hand side. Again, now Fred Johnson, you got Trey Hendrickson.
Which is why Jack Driscoll got elevated. Let's be very honest.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Because if you don't have him, you don't want to be throwing I understand you have Darian Kennard and Trevor Keegan, but you want a guy who's been there before, who's played on the right side, can play guard, can play right tackle.
Yep.
He can do a number of things for you along the lines of that. You still have Nick Gates too. He'll be there. He can play center, can play guard. You have that option. But yeah, getting a veteran like Jack Driscoll back onto the roster in case of a situation when you have 2 guys that your starters out, you want a guy in there that's been there before that could step in and can play a multitude of positions for you in a pinch. So again, that is a key move, and I'm fine by it. Listen, Jack Driscoll's not an all-pro. He's not a Pro Bowler, but he's a guy that could step in and can play a game or two. He can play if there's an injury, and I'm fine with that. He knows it. He knows the system. You want guys that are familiar with your system. So, listen,
from the Instagram files, Mowerts 18 saying the O-line has to be our biggest concern going into this game.
Going into the game, if you're going to throw the ball 40 times.
Going into the game to see who's healthy, who's not, I will agree. Then once the game starts, it's our defense as a whole is my biggest concern.
Yeah. So, listen, it's going to be a tough matchup. We know that. And again, we'll see. And listen, I'll take a game that they win with a game-winning field goal, like a game like this. Like the Bengals may be 3-4, but the 3-4 may be a little bit deceiving because
it's very deceiving
because they're playing a lot better, especially defensively. They're playing a lot better, and Lou Anarumo is one hell of a defensive coordinator, so he's going to be able to disguise and is going to try to attack Jalen. And the Eagles' best thing to do is to try to get them off. And we want to see them under center. I want to see the pistol again. I want to see all this offense that they brought last game and keep it going.
Yeah.
What you've said in the past and what makes a lot of sense too, when you look at this Eagles offensive line, if you're going to have 2 guys out and you're going to be throwing in a guy like Fred Johnson and Tyler Steen, running the ball is their strength. And listen, I don't know if you saw, did you see some of Fred Johnson's run blocks?
Oh my God, he blew people up.
So, that's his strength. And Tyler Steen looked really good as well. Juergens looked like you mentioned. I
told you my favorite play was Juergens getting out on the Kelsey sweep and blowing him. I mean, offensive linemen like to go and hit people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And unless you have an offense that is completely built around throwing the ball 40 times, you got to have a balance. And for me, that's where we have a extreme strength is Jeff Stoutland has made sure that these guys know how to run block. So crazy thought, crazy idea here. Why don't you run the ball and stick to it? You know what? Maybe one play you're only going to get 1-2 yards. Don't give up on the run game. Moritz, I like the comment you just put, right? Defense hasn't let up a touchdown in 2 weeks. I'll trust them until they prove that they can't be trusted. All I will say to play devil's advocate, because you're absolutely right. All I will say to play devil's advocate is they were playing against two of the absolute worst offenses in the league. So, yes, they went out, they did their job, but they went against two of the absolute worst offenses in the league. The Bengals are not that.
No. But we'll see what they make them look like. Got two more things here before we head on out. And the first thing is something we always do, and you know it best.
It's time for the Ulecka locks of the week. Who's your lock?
And we had mentioned on the post-game recap the Ulecka locks. I had Nick Chubb scoring a touchdown, which did happen. And you had 70 points between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Tigers, and that did not happen.
Detroit Lions.
Sorry, Detroit Lions. I'm thinking baseball. So now that brings us
I think
to...
they finished with 60, right? It was 31-29.
Yeah.
It was 31-29. They finished with 60.
So it brings us to this week in the Ulecka locks. Chip,
Right.
Since I won, I'm going to go last.
Ooh,
I'm the locksmith
man.
of the week award winner.
All right. I am going to go completely opposite this week of what I did last week. Last week I went with the high scoring situation. I'm now looking at this Panthers and Broncos game.
Okay.
Where it has just been announced that Bryce Young will once again be the starter for the Panthers after it literally took an Andy Dalton car accident to put him back in place. I do not think this is going to be a good game at all. It is in Denver, so we know that it gets weird up there. I don't think Bo Nix is a superstar guy. I'm going to say that I'm going to take the under on this, and I think that between the two teams, there will be under 35 points scored.
Total?
Total.
Wow. That one's... We'll see there.
They're two bad teams.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just...
And honestly, here's what I could think happened. The final score will be 27-3.
Okay.
If anything.
I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles game.
Of course you are.
And I'm going to say Bryce Huff gets another sack. So I have Bryce Huff getting a sack for the Philadelphia Eagles in what would be, I believe it would be his third straight game getting at least a half a sack, I believe. So I think that'll put it, I think puts him on the right path. And I think ever since they've started letting him go in a 4-point stance, he's gotten his confidence up and he's back.
Let the guys do what they do best.
Yeah. No, you're right. So that's where I'm going to go there is Bryce Huff with a sack as my Ulecka lock, which now brings us to predictions.
I was really, really right last week.
You were pretty good last week. 31-14 is what you had. But you said win the turnover battle, and you were wrong.
Yeah, well, that was just I said they have to.
Yeah. But we were right last week saying the Eagles would win, which now brings us to this week. And I'm going to start off here. And it's going to be a tough matchup. We know that. The Eagles are going up against a top quarterback, top receiving duo, which, listen, that receiving duo is probably top 3 with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Of course, you have to put Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. Now, they need a quarterback to start for them. But listen, it's going to be a tough matchup. It's not going to be easy. But I think this is the week the Eagles, one, break the curse of Cincinnati and finally get the first win in Cincinnati in 24 years, or against Cincinnati in 24 years. And the Eagles pull it out 26-21, and they get that victory. And it's going to be a fun time, Eagles, going into the Jacksonville Jaguars, which, mind you, did get changed. It is no longer a Sunday Night Football game. Forgot to mention that. It is now a 4:05 matchup on CBS.
Yeah, nobody wants to watch that game in primetime.
And which is nice. 4:05, and Eagles will be donning their Kelly Greens. But now, Chip, it comes to you now with the prediction of this.
I have been pretty good this season with the predictions of the games. And I'm hoping that this is the one where I am wrong. But I think that there are far too many weapons on the Bengals offense. And Joe Burrow is still one of the best throwing quarterbacks in the league. With the way that Fangio's defense typically defaults to the 15 yards off coverage, it's going to be an open season for Burrow. I have the Eagles, unfortunately, falling to the Bengals 30-24.
Okay. And that sucks, but
it does suck. But I mean, I look at the way that this Bengals team is on the rise. I look at the way that this Bengals team has the weapons in the areas that are weaknesses for the Eagles. And I think it could be a long day for a secondary that isn't as aggressive as they should be.
Yeah. So before we head out here, Mo Eritz 18 has two more comments here I want to get in.
Really good comments, by the way. I got to be honest.
It stinks that Instagram, we can't put them on the screen here, just the way that it works there. But fair, we just need to keep them within reach. And then also, if Huff has a good game, we win. Simple as that. So,
yeah.
We'll see. It's going to be interesting.
And then he just said, I hate that I can see the game going either of those ways. Yeah, this is one of those games where even before the season, you looked at it and you went, oh, I'm not sure how this one's going to play out.
Yeah. Listen, the record for the Bengals isn't what we thought coming into this game was going to be.
And by the way, the record for the Eagles isn't what people thought it was.
I thought they would have been,
it's a soft 4-2.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. Hopefully they can make another game like they had against the Giants and then, go from there. But
I would be very happy to be wrong.
Yes, we both would. And, well, I don't want to be wrong. You're wrong.
No, if I'm wrong, I'd be very happy if I am wrong.
Okay, well, and I would too. So with that, as we always end it, with a very happy and joyful, go Birds.
Go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.